I've got the little. Yes, sorry, I started replying to you. We are live. I'm supposed to spin my chair around and say, and we're back. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the regular board meeting for Wednesday, June 12th, 2024. Before we begin, I would like to recognize with gratitude that the CVRD is on the unceded territories of the Kwetson, Malahat, Subasit, Halalt, Penelakut, Staminas, Laakson, Palkachin, Dididat, and Pachidat nations, whose people have walked gently here for thousands of years. With that, we will get underway. Mr. Robbins, I believe we have some changes to the agenda before we move to adoption.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Hopefully just some minor changes. I understand that there's an additional closed session item, CSSR2, which requires an amendment on the agenda as presented under Section 20 to add CSSR2. Under Section 90, subsection 1, subsection I, receipt of advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege. Under PH2, and inadvertently published in your agendas the same public hearing minutes twice. We've distributed those on paper and earlier electronically, so PH2 is to be updated. And then finally, I distributed here for those that are joining here in the boardroom, a recommendation under correspondence C1. Currently just calls for direction, but staff have a recommendation for you to help you along with that piece of correspondence.
Yeah, Mr. Robbins will read that out when that item is brought forward. Thank you. So with those changes, additions to the agenda, if we can get a motion to adopt the agenda as amended. Sorry, Director Nicholson, did you have a question?
No, except are you doing a report?
Sorry?
Are you doing a report? Report of the chairperson?
Not that I'm aware of. Pardon me? FCM. Well, you could go around on FCM if that's what you're referring to, but other than that, no, I hadn't.
Well, that would be really interesting to me
to
hear about that, and also because Director Segal was at FCM, I went to the library meeting, so I feel I should report back.
I think we have a process for reports regarding committee appointments that is separate from that, but I can cede the floor under a report of the chairperson if necessary.
You know, I'd really appreciate that because I've never been to a library meeting, and so, and I've never heard a report about the library, I don't think, in my whole time here, so it would be nice to just let you know.
Okay.
In a few brief words.
Okay, and I'll try and be brief as well if we can, the FCM attendees, just because I have a feeling, for some reason, I thought this would be a quick afternoon meeting, but it may be longer. And I'm overbooked, but Director Segal can always take over as chair if I have to leave. So when we get to that, Mr. Robbins, I will take some time during report of the chairperson. So don't need to change the agenda, but I'll just take that time.
Did you want anything additional under direct reports?
I'll just give the time under report of the chairperson.
Okay. Excellent.
Thank you. So that was moved by Director Douglas, seconded by Director Martman. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Motion carries. Mr. Robbins.
Moving to adoption of minutes. M1, a recommendation that the minutes of the special board meeting of May 15, 2024 be adopted.
Moved by Director Martman. Seconded by Director Nicholson. Any discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor? None opposed. Motion carries. Mr. Robbins.
And M2, that the minutes of the regular board meeting of May 22nd, 2024 be adopted.
Moved by Director Martman. Seconded by Director Segal. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed, motion carries.
Not aware of any business arising from those minutes, which moves us to public input period.
Chairs are freewheeling on public input period policy right now, so welcome public input from anyone in the gallery on items on our agenda today, and just ask that any comments be respectful, and you have up to 3 minutes to make your comments and 15 minutes total. Oh, I thought Ms. Kaufman, I'm going to move right along, but you go ahead. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I promise not to take up too much of your time so that you can get out. I just had a question related to the ESC meeting that's on the agenda on the Poldy development, and I was seeking wish to understand the objection to the option 2. I did speak to the director of the area earlier, and the part 2 was a referral to a joint Area E and Area F APC meeting. I can certainly appreciate that the director for the area may not like a joint meeting and that they would be held separately, but I do believe it's very important because this is a significant development, and the scope of the development, with learning that First Nations will also be doing a development in the area. I think it's really important that the board hears from those people that are most affected. Where we may not share immediate borders, we are very close in proximity. We already have a significant issue with traffic on Cowichan Lake Road, with multiple accidents in a very short period of time. And I believe that there may be, we don't know because the meeting was, or the file was referred back to staff, there could be changes to it. And I think it's really important that the public have an opportunity to weigh in. And just to point out, previous to the harmonized OCP, there was work on a Satlam local area plan. The Area F was very involved because the people, I think staff and the directors recognize that the people see ourselves as one community, even though we cross each other's boundaries. And to that end, the director for our neighboring community and members of his APC were very involved in the creation of the then Satlam local area plan. And I just think it speaks, let's be good neighbors. And so I would hope that when the time comes that they could be referred to both APCs. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll get some clarity when the item comes up from staff. I couldn't get their eyes. Any other public input before we continue with our agenda? Okay, seeing none, Mr. Robbins.
We'll move to delegations, and my apologies, I'd like to introduce Renee Tab from the BC Dementia Care Society, and I'm going to have you pronounce your last name. I've got your first name, but my apologies for not having the pronunciation of your last name. Again, from the BC Dementia Care Society with regards to a request to the CVRD to be the primary applicant for the BC Healthy Communities Project Grant.
Just the blue button there.
Okay.
And welcome.
Thanks. Yes. My name's Renate, and I was going to leave out my last name, but since you want me to pronounce it, it's Gaprags. Tongue twister a little bit. And I'm here today with the founder and executive director, Krista Hill. And we have a great opportunity to partner with you. So that's really what my presentation is about. So we're looking to partner on a BC Healthy Communities project grant that is coming available. And I did find out that the Ministry of Health will be providing the funding. I'm just waiting until they actually open the grant. So about us, what did you say, up, down? You said up or down, that's what I'm trying. Okay, I can go to this little arrow. Boop. Oh, there we go. Put that up in, yeah, anyway.
Now,
Oh, okay. Haven't done a presentation for a while. So, yeah, we are a newly formed society in the Cowichan Valley. Krista took the initiative to identify a need in the area. And our goal is to create a dementia-friendly community in the Cowichan Valley by providing social support and heightening awareness about dementia. And we currently operate a memory cafe in Cary Park Community Hall, Mill Bay, where caregivers who are friends and family and their dementia partners come in a social setting. And we provide enrichment programming in this safe and inclusive environment. And then people are able to really form relationships and engage with their partners and others as they're going through their dementia journey. And our approach is a bit different than some others because participants can really provide input into how they would like to see the programming. They're the members of the group, and we want to address their needs. And so they're encouraged to share resources and participate in other things. And so our strategy is to grow our programming throughout the region, the CVRD, and beyond. And we want to be adaptable, as I said, to meeting the needs of the community, particularly seniors, and by creating dynamic outreach opportunities. So the opportunity that I'm here today to talk about, as we've been looking at how we can build and strengthen relationships with stakeholders in the CVRD and how we align with community objectives, I identified that a age-friendly action plan was completed by the CVRD in 2017. Did anybody know about that? Has anybody read it? So it was quite a good document. I think it was like 25 pages, really well laid out. And I don't believe that many of the initiatives were implemented. And this action plan, I think, was through a grant from the BC municipalities. And so it just so happens, as I'm doing some research on how we can connect with yourselves, is the BC Healthy Communities are going to offer a $15,000 project grant to any community that has already had an action plan or assessment done within 10 years. So we're in that time frame. And so I'm putting the two and two together, and I'm looking, and so with this grant, the BC Healthy Communities want regions, cities, or First Nations communities to be the applicants. So that's what I'm here encouraging you to be the applicants. But we, as an organization, would do the grant writing. And as I said, I haven't seen the grant yet, but yeah, we'll do that. So, and so for the grant, within the action plan, that 2017 action plan, they used a framework of 8 World Health Organization pillars, and those are the 5 that our organization would directly address. And I came up with 4 different project areas using the recommendations from the action plan. We would address intergenerational connections, cultural inclusion, seniors advocacy, and community collaborations. So these are the 4 project areas that I would propose in the grant, for the grant. And intergenerational connections would be, with the grant, we'd like to strengthen our relationships with the school. Of course, we're right next door in Mill Bay, and we already have volunteer students, but we would like to provide some curriculum programming and really engage with the community or the student body there. And as well, we're going to start a memory cafe at the Cowichan Community Center, and of course then can engage with the secondary students of Cowichan. So as I said, the action plan has these recommended strategies, and these are the projects that we could implement to address those. The second one being cultural inclusion, looking at ways to really immerse ourselves more in the First Nations community, and we've made some connections there, and looking to provide programming, because First Nations have a high risk of dementia population as well. And then in the action plan, it recommended initiating a seniors advisory group. And as a leader for senior supports, we would like to initiate that and form a group that would be maintained and include them in identifying issues, and also include them in meaningful contributions like meetings, outings, fundraising, and some peer-to-peer support with our participants. And also a recommendation from the action plan of 2017 was to introduce a senior hub, and we would like to champion the formation of a senior hub, which essentially is formalizing a network of community services and partnerships so that seniors can readily access that information. So our contribution, as I mentioned, is coming here and encouraging you to be the primary applicant for this grant from the BC Healthy Communities. And if we're awarded the grant, then we would take the lead on implementing and managing the day-to-day projects that I just mentioned we would look forward to doing. And your contribution would be, of course, to be responsible to guarantee that we fulfill the obligations of the grant. And also the BC Healthy Communities would like that the CVRD would have a meaningful involvement, and essentially that means introducing a resolution stating that you're supporting age-friendly communities. And so, yeah, that would be sort of the one main thing, is to provide that in a policy or a plan. And it could well already be there because of the age-friendly action plan that was produced in 2017. Potentially there's a policy that you might find, and then that's what we would have to just show them, or identify an area that you can introduce it. So yeah, so today, as I'm looking for your consideration to apply for this grant that's coming up, and I don't know the date of the opening yet, but as I said, the funding is coming available. I confirmed that the Ministry of Health will provide it, and then we can partner on writing it, or I would write it, and then hope we get it. And what I should mention too, of course, the grant will have expectations for us to be partnering with a number of stakeholders, and of course the projects I mentioned with school, with First Nations, Island Health, First Nations Health Authority. We're already embedded with the EPIC group, that's part of our Cowichan, and a number of other stakeholders that we are working with on initiatives. Yeah.
Great, thank you. So I guess you're not sure when the grant opens yet. You know it's coming, so then the grant deadline is also not known.
Yeah. I'm last year I thought I had June 1st as a date, but it just keeps saying that it's pending, and they didn't clarify when. But
Okay.
they did say the money's coming. So in the
But
next short while.
That's good though, because
Yeah.
generally from a delegation, we won't make a policy decision, but
Yeah.
that allows us to have the opportunity to refer it to staff and then see what the implications are. I just want to say, before I look to other directors, thank you for your work. Obviously, it's critically important in the region, and for your interest in sort of helping us implement some of our action plan items.
Right.
Always recognizing that we do have limited resources available in the strategic plan we have, while it is edited, we seem to be finding that it's challenging to get traction on the existing strategic priorities we have, but when we can partner with someone to help us advance good efforts for the region, I think that we'll look to capture those opportunities when we can.
Yeah, I appreciate
But
you.
generally, in this situation, we would refer the presentation and the dialogue to staff. I'm looking forward to a report to advise us on our organizational capacity to support you in that work if the grant were successful. But I'll turn it to our colleagues. I've got Director Segalin and Director Wilson online. Sorry, because I only have, we need to lower the, thank you.
Thank you so much for the presentation. I'd like to make that referral motion. Do I need
So
to
refer it
elaborate?
to staff for a report back on the implications of assisting the Dementia Care Society with this project.
Yeah, and just one comment. You mentioned partnering with Francis Kelsey, and I know that the two elementary schools in the area, George Bonner Elementary and Mill Bay Nature School,
Bonner, I went to Bonner.
they do lots of field trips, either walking to Cary
Right.
Park or the Mill Bay Nature Park. And I know I have lots of experience from when I was in daycare elementary, visiting senior centers, and I think it's just such an opportunity for Joy to connect those two
Yeah,
communities.
well, in my research, I saw that there's this whole intergenerational programming, and some daycare centers embed themselves in seniors' homes. So there's a whole level of involvement, and definitely that's part of our intergenerational planning. But I do appreciate too you recognizing that, you know, I saw that you did an action plan, and so let's do some implementation of it. Yeah.
Thank you. Before we got to the discussion, did I get a seconder on the motion? Okay, I'll take Director McGonigal because it seems Director Segal preferred him. I don't know why. I'm just kidding. I believe I saw Director Morrison discussion. Oh, sorry. Director Wilson and then Morrison.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thank you for the presentation. In this particular case, I have to say that dementia and that kind of illness, for want of a better word, is something which I fear the most. It's something which is so difficult to deal with, and I've had to try and do that in the past with relatives. So thank you for everything that you're doing there. In terms of the grant, I hope that we do have the capacity. I know that we are somewhat tied up, but should you need any help on committees in the future, I'm quite happy to try and sit on the committee with you as well. But thank you again for everything you're doing.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. Director Morrison.
Yeah, thank you, and love the work you're doing, and congratulate you on what you've done thus far. This may be a bit of a prickly question that I pose next, but firstly to staff, can we get in as far as that report goes, the availability of these grants and what jurisdictions can make application? Like, I'd like to know if this is a one per CVRD or one per electoral area, one per municipality. And I pose that question because if there's only one per regional district or one per electoral areas as a group, would you be able to, and I speak of this from experience, would you be able to, in a sense, upscale the work of the report to give it some broader applicability? We don't necessarily want to have the seniors in Cowichan Lake doing a report, or this from another electoral area doing a report. If you're the only ones that get one from within the regional district, would you be able to upscale it and give it a bit more broader applicability so that it can not necessarily cover the whole region to the same extent, but give us some cues and tips that the whole region can benefit from?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, part of coming here, especially at the CVRD, where we have multiple players at the table, is to even know if anybody else is applying for this particular grant. And it's hard to know unless you've heard. And then, yeah, the scalability, I mean, we're anticipating that this is just part of our greater plan, our strategic plan to utilize the funding. And I meant to look, because I believe it's one of those things where you can keep applying. And it just so happens that, like, are you saying that if Duncan applies and CVRD applies and First Nations apply, we'd all get $15,000? Or I'm not exactly sure. I did have it in my head that maybe I need to go to the city of Duncan, get them to apply, and
Yeah, I think the point being is if the CVRD can only apply as a group, then the project would need to apply to all of the regional
Yes.
areas, not just the south area, for example,
Right.
right? That it would need to be an effort to serve the needs of the broader community.
Yeah.
If it's only one grant per CVRD, whereas if each electoral area could have its own initiative,
Right.
then you can focus that grant funding in on one area. Otherwise, it would need to apply to the whole region.
Yeah.
The programming, et cetera, et cetera.
Right, that's right. Yeah, and so currently, we initiated the programming in Mill Bay, but the programming that I'm referring to in for the grant is going to be more broad-reaching in terms of the Seniors Hub and the Seniors Advisory Group. Those would be two opportunities where it wouldn't have to be specific to a small Mill Bay, essentially. And also any other stakeholder groups, like with the intergenerational. That one's a little more, because we were looking at location, so right now it was Mill Bay, then we're moving into Duncan. Definitely can go to other parts of, Lake Cowichan, and being sort of that catchment for the community at large as well. So certainly our mind strategically for the organization is to cover the entire region and beyond as we're growing. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm not seeing any further hands, and staff have heard the discussion. The motion to refer to staff is on the floor. It's been moved and seconded. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Motion carries. Well, thank you so much for your work and
Okay.
for coming in today.
Great, yeah, thank you.
You were successful because that's exactly the successful outcome you want to see
All
from a
right, good.
delegation, so.
Yeah, well, thanks
Step
to
one.
Patrick to giving me a heads up on what to expect too.
Great, thank you very
All
much.
right, thank you.
Have a great day.
All right, thanks. Yeah, do you want to know Sean again? Oh, that's okay. All right.
All right, moving on, Mr. Robbins.
We're going to move to
Report of the chairperson.
report of the chairperson.
Interesting FCM. Lots going on at home while we were in Calgary. Lots happening in Calgary with major infrastructure breakdown. So that's just setting the stage for an interesting conference. I find FCM generally, and this is just my perspective, and others that attended are welcome to share, that FCM isn't quite as engaging for me, or I would say the sessions are drier than I find at UBCM, and maybe that's just because it's more directly relevant when we're talking about provincial municipal relations than when we're talking about federal municipal relations. And generally speaking, at conferences, I find the sessions are valuable, particularly at each conference. There's usually particular ones, whether it's asset management, climate action, that are particularly poignant or relevant feeling to the issues we're dealing with here. This year, I'll be frank, both in the networking component, which I think is the highest value of these conferences, it's almost like peer support. You talk to people from across the country and realize, you're really not alone when you see that you face the same challenges on different scales maybe, but similar challenges on things like housing and climate adaptation or mitigation. But especially in the last few years around the interface between elected officials and the community more broadly. What's being broader termed as harassment of elected officials is actually quite real across the country. And there's some pretty stark and, powerful examples, particularly towards women and groups that are traditionally marginalized, either through their sexual orientation or race. That they are definitely higher proportion are targeted by harassment and bullying, and some of those examples are pretty extreme. But I think there's some shared support in that in that discussion, but also some alarming, sort of realities that are being faced, especially due to social media and the spreading of either misinformation or personal attacks via social media. And there is legislation underway at the federal level to create accountability both on the part of social media platforms and Facebook group administrators, that sort of thing, for the messages that are shared that would be considered slanderous or otherwise. And just a deeper conversation about or what did they call it? Awful but not unlawful conversations. And that really, especially in the last while, it's been a trend on social media for a while, but especially in the last few years, the civility's gone, the ability to disagree without impugning other people's character or casting aspersions towards who people are. And the reason I say that is because I've worked with so many people at this table, other tables across the country, and I will say without reservation that despite disagreements on policy or actions that organizations in local government take, I would say that I haven't found a single person that I've worked with, no matter how vehemently I disagree with Director Manhas, that aren't good people and doing what they believe is right. And if we can debate the policy, sometimes we can get frustrated. Sometimes some of us are better at advocating for and debating from our viewpoint, but to keep it respectful and understand that everybody that sits around these tables actually truly loves and cares about their communities and trying to do the right thing for today and for the future. And I know that we can say that as much as we want, and unfortunately, we don't seem to be waging that war with some in the greater communities. But I will continue to say that I know for a fact that the people that sit around this table are good people and don't deserve harassment despite what you may disagree with them on in terms of policy. So that was kind of like the highlights for me. Having to conserve water just shows us that it doesn't matter if you're a multi-billion-dollar a year budget like the greater Calgary area or multi-tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars maybe in a small electoral area. Infrastructure challenges are really real. And I guess that leads me to the last theme that I picked up was a new sort of agreement between local governments and the province and federal governments on how we fund infrastructure and all the needs of communities with the growth pressures that we have, that it's completely unacceptable to be putting the burden on our property taxpayers to come up with the infrastructure required to accommodate the growth we're facing, when in fact it's the federal, maybe to a lesser extent the provincial governments that are calling for that growth to come. And that's to support our seniors as we continue to age as communities and a higher population percentage becomes senior. We need those younger motivated workers, whether they're through inter-provincial immigration or immigration into Canada from other countries. But we need to be able to responsibly accept that growth without essentially pushing property taxpayers out of their homes due to the necessity of continued tax increases. So we need that new fiscal framework with the provincial and federal governments to tap into other revenue sources so that we can be sustainable moving forward. That's my report. I'll let the others who went to FCM, I'll just go around table perhaps. Director Segal, if you want to hit on some things, and then we'll finish with, maybe not finish because Director Douglas might want to share some FCM observations, but okay. Director Nicholson with, it's the chair's report, man. Director Nicholson to talk about her experience at the library board. Go ahead, Director Segal.
Thank you. I really enjoyed going to FCM. I feel like I might want to take some time to make a more formal report. I just got back from Calgary yesterday. It was really interesting just to see the political leanings of the whole country together, and that here in BC we are pretty left-leaning. And really great to hear the leaders of most of the federal political parties speak. And when I first decided to go to FCM, I thought, this is like UBCM, but like with federal ministers. Like, okay, so how do we get these meetings? And that's not really how it works. But I did get to speak to an FCM staff member who was asking local governments how we would like them to advocate on reconciliation. And so BC is really like talked about, like, we're so far ahead in reconciliation because we have DRIPA. But I brought up that most of our nations are not treated yet, which, you know, across the country, most other nations are treated. And that you know, this reconciliation movement that we have here can feel fragile when we have a federal election coming up and we have a number of nations in advanced negotiations. And so I've asked for advocating on those treaties to this current government. So that felt kind of exciting. That's about it for me.
Thank you. Director McGonigal.
Thank you very much. Similar to Director Segal, I went with the premise of networking. I think that FCM is an opportunity to gauge the problems in not only smaller communities similar to the town of Lake Cowichan, but also to the larger communities like Calgary and Toronto and Quebec City. Just to see the gauge of the needs of each of the communities is cognizant of the needs of all communities, whether it's infrastructure deficits similar to the water main break, the water feeder break in Calgary, which was large enough to drive a truck through, and to understand that the mayor was responsible for that. She stated in a statement that she doesn't even own a pickaxe, so it was not possible for her to cause that. One of the things that myself and Director Abbott attended was a brand new recycling facility within the town or city of Calgary that was built and is operated by GFL. They built the infrastructure, and Calgary has a contract with them to take their single stream recyclables. That's everything except number 4 plastics, I believe. So it all goes into one bin. There's a 95% uptick in participation in recycling in Calgary. It's all sorted automatically through a feeder system, but there is still approximately 50 employees that work on the lines, sorting as the system, which is run by AI, learns the recyclables. It's amazing to watch this technology work and the end product come through in bales to be shipped to various purchasers throughout mostly North America, but some offshore as well. I also had an opportunity to sit in on a meeting called Sacred Spaces that was available throughout the week. I finally had an opportunity to sit in on the discussion, the circle discussion. FCM has hired an Indigenous person on their staff now who is working on reconciliation opportunities throughout the Federation of Canadian Municipalities. And just to see how far ahead British Columbia is on implementing DRIPA, for instance, community-to-community meetings, which a lot of other provinces and municipalities are just starting to incorporate. I think we have leaps and bounds ahead of some, but we're still behind in the treaty process, as was mentioned. And I think once we get to true reconciliation, as was stated, then we will all be better for what comes forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Director McGonigal. Director Morrison.
Thank you, Chair. You gave a fairly exhaustive report. I'll just sort of highlight a couple of things that I thought were important, and the municipal growth framework. So it was announced last year, and it's so encouraging to hear FCM building on what was essentially the white paper on strong fiscal futures from, I think, 2013. And it's that basis of a generation ago, local governments had 18% of every tax dollar. And now we're trying to provide an increasing level of service on 8 to 10% of the tax dollars that are raised in this country. So they've got the foundational stuff. They understand that it's got to be predictable, sustainable funding and tied to growth. So the interesting part in this is there's been attempts to go from the federal government directly to municipal local governments, and our friends in Victoria don't really like that. So it's going to be a question of, is it going to be a tripartite type of funding arrangement, or will it be more of the feds sending dollars directly? And I think that's mainly a larger city type of scenario, but we do have the Green Municipal Fund, which is operated by our friends at FCM. I've got this sheet that didn't fare so well coming home, but it's still there. Really important that it's tied to growth, and I love the saying they came up with, because of all the increased downloading that we have, that we're dealing with 21st century problems funded by 19th century solutions. So 150-year-old, 1867 was the foundation of how we got our funding, and we're dealing with a totally different world. I'll go straight to the final two quick things. The final plenary was on harassment, violence, and incivility with elected officials, not only online but in person. And I knew it was bad. We all know it's bad, but it's happening across the country. To the extent that people are resigning from office, it's gotten that bad. And the people that are actually staying in office are facing unbelievable amounts of vitriol and poisonous, speech towards them. And something has to be done, and we have to continue to work hard on that. People have resigned, and people won't run because it's just not worth it, the price they pay to their families. And lastly, I'll reiterate again, the past president, Scott Pierce, was a small municipal he's not small. He's a elected official from a small rural community in Quebec, served as the president of FCM. This year's president comes from a small community in Newfoundland. 200 people, president of FCM. And the thing that they both had in common, in addition to being hard worker and committed to the country and all of that, is they attend each year. And I think we should be thinking seriously about AVICC, UBCM, and FCM as being the stable minimum requirements for elected officials to attend, because they are very, very valuable in my eye. Maybe not so much in the chair's eye this year, but they are very important, I think, to develop the skills and the expertise of individuals. Thanks.
Thanks. I wouldn't say I didn't think it was valuable. I said they were a little dry. Yeah, I'll say the UBCM ones, maybe the speakers are a little more dynamic, but that's just, but you know what I will say, next year, I've avoided the study tours in the past. There were so many really good tours this year, and hearing from people who went on those tours, after looking closer at them, I wish I hadn't missed the opportunity to book those tours, because I think that's maybe where some of the sizzle came from for some of the attendees. Director Abbott.
Thank you, Chair. Echo, ditto. I wanted to just say one thing I learned was the emphasis on local government. And Ian advocated numerous times, stop using the word municipal, emphasize local. I also noticed and took away our leaders from across the country, leaders like our Prime Minister, who flew in from Normandy to make a very compelling speech, and then took Q&A without a note. Without one note, he spoke compelling, and he took the tough questions and handled them well. Followed by Jagmeet Singh, who checked in remotely, and the last one who was most impressive was Elizabeth May, speaking and forcefully about, as only she can, about not taking guff from Premier Danielle Smith from Alberta. To take advantage of what you just mentioned, Chair, I took advantage of about 4 group study exchange. Tim McGonigal covered the recycling without a flaw. That is so impressive, but to Mr. Olazinga, allowing people to throw almost everything into the blue box and it gets sorted out. Yes, there's going to be the odd piece of garbage, but between personnel, AI, the machinery, they get the 90% uptake, most impressive. And the final group study that I really got a lot out of was diverting stormwater drainage before it hits the Bow River. And they're able to get away, I think, some huge percentage of pollutants that would otherwise be in the river. And of course, they had a huge atmospheric river event that they learned the hard way. So, and I would like to thank the CVRD and the taxpayers that allowed me to go on such an informative function. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll let Director Douglas was the last one that was there? Oh, Director Manhas was there too, that's right. I didn't
You
see
forgot
him
me,
much.
you didn't see me much.
Yeah, I didn't see a lot. Not sure.
No, I thought it was I thought it was an okay event. What was lacking, I think everybody acknowledged that's the interaction with elected officials from senior levels of government. At UBCM, all the MLAs from all parties are there. They can have a chat with them, have a coffee with them, but this here is nobody there. I think one of the most important things is talking to the networking piece. The first night we got there, we got into a hotel, and we ran to a couple of guys, the Reeve from Delburn, a small community of 980 people in Alberta. And they had the same issues as we do with the fire and the cost of fire and police and policing and all that. So, yeah, I thought it was an okay event, and I'm looking forward to next year. Next year's in Ottawa, and hopefully we can get more contact and interactions with the elected officials. Thanks.
Yeah, I would agree. This FCM was the least amount of elected officials. Halifax, I had meetings with Minister of Transport. Ottawa, obviously, even in Toronto, at least there was ministerial presence there and some MPs. This year, I don't think I saw a single one, except for the sort of show up for the speech. Director Douglas, and then we'll go to Director Nicholson.
Yeah, I'll be brief. The study tours were definitely a highlight for me. I had a chance to, one of the tours was the East Village area of Calgary, which was traditionally a more industrial, some older housing. And what Calgary's done, and this is interesting with Calgary being an Albertan city, they've set up a city-owned development corporation that works with the private sector, and they've redeveloped this whole East Village area, which abuts the Bow River. And so there's high-density housing, all kinds of active transportation infrastructure. It's quite a beautiful part of the city. I think what they've identified as one of the flaws with the approach they've taken, there hasn't really been that focus on affordability. So a lot of it is higher-end housing, but they are looking to review that now. But it's a great example of a local government partnering with the private sector to do a lot of good for the city. The other part caught my attention. It was, Director Morrison referenced this, the Green Municipal Fund. The FCM has announced there's, I think, $290 million now available. They've secured through the federal government for tree planting initiatives and also to support local governments in developing urban forest strategies. So I think this is something we're going to look at our municipality or council may consider, and perhaps it's something we want to consider here at the CVRD as well. I'd say the last part I just wanted to highlight was myself and a couple of my colleagues on North Cowichan Council, we took a couple hours on one day at the conference to rent some electric scooters. Definitely didn't picture myself whipping around an electric scooter at FCM, but it was a great way to see the city. And Calgary's obviously a lot different than what we're used to here with Vancouver, Victoria, and here in the Cowichan Valley with the mountains that we all love so much. But it is a beautiful city, and they have put a lot of investment into active transportation. So we were able to cover quite a distance along the city core and the Bow River on their extensive network of bike lanes and walking paths. And I highly recommend it for anyone next time they're in Calgary.
I also highly recommend we get some of those scooters here. Those are amazing. Although I won't name the counselor, but took a pretty hard fall. But just talking about how great it was, and then because there's some potholes in their infrastructure there. Anyway, but yeah, great experience all around. Thank you for that. Director Nicholson, to talk about library board.
Thank you. I think libraries are really important, so I welcomed the opportunity to sit in for Director Segal at the Vancouver Island Library Board, and I I hadn't really thought about it, but it appears that there are a lot of members on the board, so it is, they did a phenomenal management of a meeting that was a hybrid remote and in person. And I just, like, we should take some tips. But just as some highlights that I thought that you would be interested to know is that up in Haida Gwaii and Masset, they are building a new library that is also with First Nations having a language lab. I thought that was really a cool initiative that's going on. And they are also grappling with policies around keeping safe, respectful places in the libraries. And we had quite a long discussion about wording and how it would operationally be a good tool for the for staff. And I was just thinking of our rec centers and how, we really should we should try and collaborate a little bit more with other people who are grappling with the same things, because there's lots to be learned, what you run into. And we did the financial stuff, but I'm not up on it, so I wasn't able to really follow it too much, but that was my experience, and yeah, it was a good one, even though it was Saturday morning.
Great, thank you. Did you attend in person or remotely? Yeah. Yeah, I didn't realize that it was such a big group until you realize that every municipal and local government in the area has appointees on it, and you're like, oh, that's a big group, so. Great, thank you. I think that's it. We won't take a break. We'll try and get through some stuff on our agenda before we take a break. Mr. Robbins.
We're going to move to a piece of correspondence from the Joint Executive Director of the Coquixala Water Sustainability Plan process with regards to a funding opportunity. We've just distributed to you all here in person a staff recommendation to help you along with this piece of correspondence.
Could you read out the recommendation for us, Mr. Robbins?
Staff be directed to work with the Coquixala Water Sustainability Plan process regarding submitting an application to the Investment in Agriculture Foundation's Agriculture Water Infrastructure Program for Phase 2 of the Coquixala Storage Feasibility Assessment, and that prior to accepting any funding, that staff report back to the board with details relating to any CBRD commitments relating to this project.
Moved by Director Nicholson, seconded by Director Douglas. Any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed, motion carries. Mr. Robbins.
We'll move to...
Mr.
Oh,
Chair.
sorry, Mike. My apologies. You're the only person not in the room, so I forgot that I got to keep checking my screen. Go ahead. I'll move you to the stage so you're big on my screen.
Okay.
There you go. Now I've got just you and the podium.
Thank you very much. I've got no problem with this motion at all, but I do need just a little bit of clarification if I can, if the staff are available. The key question regarding it, and this is paragraph 3 or 4, where it says one key question, excuse me, is how water storage infrastructure can help address water demand and increasing climate vulnerability. Water storage. Can somebody tell me what is meant by, where is it here, artificial aquifer storage?
Mr. Moore?
Yeah, thank you. Through the chair to Director Wilson, that's basically different methods of injecting more water into the aquifer to store it there. So capturing more of the rainwater that falls, it would normally run off out to the sea and storing it in the aquifer longer.
Good. That's what I thought, and that's the kind of thing that I'd be looking for, because every time, when we do have huge amounts of water coming down from the sky, you look in the rivers and see it all running away there. One of the other questions I have on this particular one here is dugouts and tanks. Now, at the previous meeting, we did have a concern from one of the farmers. Is there any funding on how much it would cost for them to put a dugout in? Is there any funding available to help the farmers in this respect if they decide to try and get a dugout on their properties, Keith?
Again, through the chair to Director Wilson, this program is focused on larger community systems that are going to serve multiple farmers. But through the environmental farm plan, program, there's best management practices. There are programs available through there that do support the individual on-farm storage.
Oh, good.
There's
Good.
other concerns around those programs, and that's why we're looking to do more at the community scale. But those are available, and farmers can certainly talk to the regional agrologist for some advice on that.
Yeah, and one final follow-up, please, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
And this is to do with damming. And this is another one of those things that comes up because there is a huge amount of runoff that goes almost to waste into the ocean and things like that. I think most of the things that have been identified here have been at lakes, and we've seen how important this is at Cowichan Lake with the raising of the weir. I would hope that anything like this would... How do we go about getting this done quickly? Because the weir took years and years for somebody to finally agree. And do you have any potential sites apart from those which are mentioned there? Is it worth starting that process now?
I believe, I'll put it through to Mr. Moore, but this is the feasibility assessment stage, so this is exactly what illuminates those opportunities, right?
Good, good.
By getting this funding, if we're successful, we'll highlight what the most feasible opportunities are for storage in that area. Mr. Moore?
Yep.
Yeah, that's essentially it. To the chair, this is to do a phase 2 study. There was a phase 1 study done a couple of years ago that basically came up with a long list of every possible option for water storage and supply in the Coxsahla, and this is to sort of try to narrow that down and firm up the costs and stuff around which ones are actually feasible.
Good. And my final point here is that we all know this is not one of those things that can be done over the next few years. This is something which is time critical. So I would hope that any feasibility study would bring that point forward as well, so that we can project or present to the authorities who have got the money bags that we need to get this done as quickly as we can. Thank you.
Thank you. I wish I could find those people with money bags for our communities sometimes. We could all use a few. So Director Toporowski, I do recognize you're also online. I put you both in large boxes on my screen, so hopefully I won't miss you. If I see your hands come up, I will definitely go to you both. Any other speakers on the motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Motion carries. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Moore. Mr. Robbins.
We're going to go to the first committee reports, which was distributed from to you here in the boardroom, the committee of the whole meeting of June 12 for Director McGonigal.
It's just the one-sheeter, folks. It was just the recommendations passed this morning to go to this meeting. So the R1 and R2 recommendations are there. Director McGonigal.
You can call me Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair McGonigal.
Mr. Chair. Would you like them read out? They were
They're printed for here. They were they were read out this morning. Unless one of the directors feels it's necessary, I think we can move them.
Does anyone want one pulled? So we can redo it again? I would move the recommendations, Mr. Chair.
Seconded by Director Segal. All those in favor? Any opposed? Director McClinton opposed, and Morrison opposed, and motion carries. Motions carry. And that concludes your report, Director McGonigal.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Mr. Robbins on the CR2.
Is the report and recommendations of the Electoral Area Services Committee meeting of June 5th, 2024. Director Morrison.
Chair Director Morrison.
Well, given this was so ably handled by Director Martman as Vice Chair, I'm wondering if he might like to present this.
Well, Director Martman, please do. After doing such a great job at the meeting, don't bungle this. No, I'm just kidding.
Let me do a mic check first.
Yeah, sounds good, sounds good.
Apparently in Alberta, the Wi-Fi disintegrates over the Rocky Mountains, so. Okay, well, there must be another mountain somewhere. Thank you, Chair, and the Electoral Area Services Committee meeting of June 5th. I would like to report and recommend for all electoral area, all directors, C1 to C8, R7, R8, R9.
Moved by, are you moving those items? And
Yes,
seconded
moved.
by Director McClinton. Any discussion on those? This is for the entire board. Seeing none, all those in favor? None opposed, motion carries. Director Marvin.
And for electoral area directors only, R6, I move R6, R1, R3, R4, and R5.
Do we have a seconder? Director Morrison seconds. Any discussion on those? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed, motion carries.
And so is my report.
Thank you, Director Martman. Well done. I always say that's about as smooth as I've seen at this part of the table. Somehow, I don't know, I expected something to be pulled, but moving on, Director, or Mr. Robbins.
CR3 is the report and recommendations of the Couch and Core Recreation Commission meeting of May 9, 2024. There are two recommendations. One, that the recreation fees and charges rental spaces policy be approved, and two, that the 2024-2026 rental space fee schedule be approved.
That's been moved by Director Nicholson, seconded by Director McGonigal. I think I saw his hand there, flash up. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed, motion carries. You're gonna have some deja vu here, folks. It's only the titles that change. Mr.
And
Robbins.
from the Couch and Lake Recreation Commission meeting of May 27, 2024, the two recommendations that the recreation fees and charges rental spaces policy be approved, and that the 2024 to 2026 rental space fee schedule be approved.
So moved.
And seconded by Director Manhas. Call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Director McGonigal opposed. Motion carries.
And for the Cowichan South Recreation Commission meeting of May 28, 2024, the two similar recommendations that the recreation fees and charges rental spaces policy be approved, and that the 2024 to 2026 rental spaces fee schedule be approved.
Moved by Director Abbott, seconded by Director Segal. All those in favor? And opposed? Director Istash opposed? Oh. Okay. Okay. And not opposed, sorry, my apologies, minute takers. All approved unanimously. Moving on to CR6, Mr. Robbins.
It's a report from recommendations from the Cowichan North Recreation Commission meeting of May 28, 2024. There are three recommendations from that commission.
I think I have a question from Director Istash, or comment.
Chair, I'd like to make the motion that we approve this recommendation, but as such, I'd like to, as this is a change with core recreation in the way that policies flow with regards to fees and changes, I think it'd be just a really quick, good opportunity, and as well that we have the Director of Parks and Recreation from Ladysmith here, Mr. Barfoot, but to have Mr. Elzinga quickly touch on the process of how that we're going to be having to look at the fees and policies in regards to how we adopt them and the jumping back and forth between municipalities and the new regional rec approval process that comes to the board here.
I think it may be partially due to the fact that ours is by bylaw in Ladysmith. Yeah, not by policy. Go ahead, Mr. Elzinga.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through to Director Istash, who is also the chair of the Cowichan North Recreation Commission. So he spoke to that fairly well. The fact is that with the CVRD, we do not have a fees and charges bylaw for our recreation facilities. However, there are fees and charges bylaws for North Cowichan and for Ladysmith. And so we're in the position currently where we have two bylaws butting up against each other. We have the Recreation Commission and the Governance Around Regional Recreation, which is established by bylaw, as well as Ladysmith and North Cowichan have their own fees and charges bylaws. So we'll be working on that project over the next probably 2 or 3 years. So this is one of those first steps. You've already passed 3 motions related to the CVRD facilities. I'd like to introduce Mr. Chris Barfoot, who's the Parks and Recreation Director for Ladysmith, one of the important members of our team, and so he can speak to anything specific to Frank Jameson Community Center on the recommendations in there. But the process that we've adopted for Frank Jameson and for Fuller Lake Arena is that the Commission would adjudicate the recommendations, send them on to the board, and then we will request, in this case, Ladysmith, but potentially North Cowichan in the future, to adopt the changes within their own bylaw.
Great, thank you. Does that clarify it, Director Istash? Yeah. So he's moved the recommendations, seconded by Director Douglas. Just one comment. I know this is probably not for here, but for our council, but what about that tent? Oh, that's a different conversation. Sorry, Mr. Barfoot. Director Martin.
Thank you, and while I have Mr. Ozinga and Mr. Barfoot in the same room, perhaps you could just, it's not in the motions that are in this report, if you could just maybe share the direction perhaps received about grant and aid, well, the idea of how do you support communities, I guess groups that want to have ability to access without having necessarily funds.
Thank you. Through the chair to Director Martman. So obviously regional districts and municipalities are different in how they handle grant and aid, and we had a discussion at the Cowichan North Commission around how some fees were waived previously for Frank Jameson Community Center by using grant and aid from the town of Ladysmith. We can't do the same thing at the Cowichan Valley Regional District, so there has been a request that came through the Cowichan South Recreation Commission on a report to waive fees. And so the North asked for that same report, so that's going to be going to the South first. Kim Little is working on that report right now around waiving fees, which may have a slightly different process than what Ladysmith is used to, using some grant and aid funds to do the same thing. So we have to make those two processes as consistent as we can. That report is forthcoming to the next commission meetings.
Great, thank you. Historically, we've been generally happy to waive fees for school and community groups, whether they were in Ladysmith or Area H. But yeah, obviously we need to figure out those little wrinkles in the unintended consequences of governance structure changes. So I look forward to that coming in the future. I just say we just rescind everything and throw it all on these guys. No, I'm just kidding. So did I call the question on that? All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed? Motion carries. That takes us to, do we want to just power through, folks? Okay. Well, jeez. I'll take that as a yes. Director's reports. Director Deck.
Am I on? At our last meeting together, Kate Coyote, Vice Chair of Cowichan Women's Health Collective, introduced Rhoda Taylor, their researcher, who presented research on the period promise, which was very informative and also pretty heart-wrenching. So I'd like to thank Bev Suderman for helping me throughout this process. So this motion that is before you came to me from Dr. Teal Phelps-Bondroff, who I've met twice before. Once when he was a toddler bounding around his backyard, chasing the family rabbits, and the second was at the AVICC conference last year, where I was so impressed by his intelligence, his passion, and his compassion. In communications that followed, he asked that I bring this motion before you and then on to the UBCM if you pass this resolution. In his words, this is what the resolution envisions. A representative from Period Promise, he and a few others would draft a questionnaire to municipalities asking them if they did offer free menstrual products to in their facilities, how their programs worked, any challenges they'd encountered, and where they sourced their dispensers and products, etc. And if they did not currently offer products in washrooms, what were the barriers to their doing that? And UBCM would circulate the survey and promote it and help facilitate submissions. The group then would compile the results, draft a toolkit, which would seek to answer any questions and address any challenges municipalities had encountered, and basically serve as frequently asked questions for staff implementing the policy. And then the UBCM would help circulate this document to members and potentially help host a workshop. So that's what the toolkit entails, and that's basically what this motion is requesting of you.
Thank you. And you see the motion there. Sorry, Ms. Miles Wilson.
Just wanted to point out, Mr. Chair, so if you're looking to submit this to the UBCM, the deadline is June 15th. So I just wanted to reference that. As well, if you're going to be submitting a late resolution to UBCM, there's a background material that will be required to be submitted along with that by the 15th.
Yeah, I believe Radium Hot Springs has already submitted this, so this would be us joining them. If not, the materials are all included, and we could forward that through staff.
By the 15th, yeah.
Yeah, so just for clarity to the board, Mr. Phelps Bondroff, and I believe it was Radium Hot Springs have already approved this motion with the changes that were shared today. So if we approve this motion, it would be forwarding that along, and it may be as a co-sponsor with Radium Hot Springs and possibly other municipalities as well. So
is that a motion? Can I second it?
well, the recommendation is there. Are you moving it, Karen?
Yes, I am.
Yeah, and then we'd have a seconder, Director Acton. Any further discussion? And just so you're clear, the report and everything, the toolkit would suss out all the costs of doing this and stuff, and then the individual boards and such could implement. Director Acton.
I just wanted to say thank you to Director Deck for bringing this forward. And clearly we didn't have a lot of time, so you pulled it off really quickly, so that's good. And you're saying we could get it in by the 15th?
Yeah, I believe we can, and we'll follow up with Dr. Phelps Bondroff, but they've kind of done all the work. And I believe he said it was Radium Hot Springs has already passed that motion and moved it forward. And he's been working with UBCM staff too to make sure it gets in there. And we'll follow up because it's the 12th. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed, motion carries. Thank you. Sorry, Director Segal.
Can I make another motion off that?
Oh, go ahead.
So I'd like to make a motion that staff be directed to investigate the costs of providing period products in CVRD facilities and to report back to the board so that this can be considered in advance of the 2025 budget process.
Seconded by Director Estash. Any further discussion? Sorry, Director Martman.
Thanks. And in principle, I have no question with it. I think we just gave direction asking the UBCM to sort of work towards that. So I'm wondering if we're going to get a report. Yeah. Anyways, this is a process piece. But I think the question I have is, I'm for that. Does it fit in our strategic plan? And because it's, again, we're adding our budget enhancements together. And just curious, did you know which action item this would fall under?
I could probably pull one up.
It'd probably be multiple, eh? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. That's my only question, making sure that we're aligned with that. Thank you.
I think I saw a hand over on the left-hand side, Director Acton.
Yeah, so I understand this motion is to get the information so that we can just follow a guide. So I would prefer to wait for that so that we're not making staff go out and research all this and then also when we have that UBCM support, hopefully we would get some kind of funding to implement this in community centers. So to make a budget decision right now, I can't support that.
Sorry, it's to ask, the motion was to ask for the cost implications, not to make a budget decision. But I just want to answer the previous question, multiple strategic objectives, increase the levels of economic resiliency, security, and prosperity for residents of Cowichan Valley. I think that when we've heard about period poverty, that's part of it. To create healthable, livable, and efficiently serviced communities, I think that could fit under that. And there are maybe others as well, but those were just two quick ones looking at my placemat. We can go around this. I will be honest, the resolution that's put forward at UBCM is to ask the UBCM group to develop a toolkit that includes all the costs and everything. So to be fair, this is a bit of a redundant motion, but I think from my understanding, these are prepackaged products available through most suppliers. I'm hoping it could be fairly easy for our staff to just go get a quote on how much these cost and what the refill costs are, installation costs, and give us an order of magnitude ahead of the budget. If this waits till UBCM, it'll be another year before we can discuss it in advance of budget. So there's a little bit of both sides of the argument. Maybe we can just vote on how our conscience tells us to vote. All those in favor? And opposed? Director Acton opposed. All right. Thank you again, going.
Missing something.
Maybe we can figure it out after. The public hearing reports, I think we're there, aren't we, Mr. Robbins?
We are, and.
You made the correction earlier,
Correction
so
for
that's good.
PH1 should be the public hearing report and minutes of the May 9th, 2024, with regards to CVRD bylaw number 4569. And the recommendation is that the public hearing report and minutes of May 9th, 2024, CVRD bylaw number 4569, South Cowichan zoning amendment bylaw PID 000-278-122, 2022 be received.
Okay, quite clear. Moved by Director Segal, seconded by Director Deck. Thank you. Any discussion? Looked like it was a hot public hearing with no members of the public present. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed, motion carries. Mr. Robbins, page 2.
PH2 as published, the recommendation is to receive the public hearing report and minutes of May 9th, 2024, public hearing on CVRD bylaw number 4276, South Cowichan zoning amendment bylaw PID 0255803111.
No, this is 4276. The previous one was 4569. They were both held on the same date and time. This is just to accept the report. Do we have a mover? Director Segal, seconded by Director Deck. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Motion carries. Mr. Robbins, let's rock and roll.
We're going to run through a series of bylaws. B1 CVRD bylaw number 4531, the recommendation to provide first, second, and third reading of said bylaw.
Moved by Director Segal, seconded by Director Acton. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Motion carries.
And
Hope I didn't do anything wrong. No reason to throw your pen at me.
And that bylaw 4531 be adopted.
Moved by Director Segal without a pen, was seconded by Director Morrison. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Motion carries.
B2, that CVRD bylaw number 4532 be granted for second and third readings.
Moved by Director Nicholson, seconded by Director Acton. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Motion carries.
And 4532 be adopted.
Moved by Director Deck, seconded by Director Acton. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Motion carries.
B3, that CVRD bylaw number 4584 be granted first, second, and third readings.
Moved by Director Segal, seconded by Director Abbott. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Motion carries.
And B4, that CVRD bylaw number 4585 be granted first, second, and third readings.
Moved by Director Nicholson, seconded by Director Segal. I was looking for Director Wilson, but I didn't see his hand. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Motion carries.
B5, that CVRD bylaw number 4586 be granted first, second, and third readings.
Moved by Director Abbott, seconded by Director Morrison. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Motion carries.
And bylaws for electoral area directors only, BEA1, CVRD bylaw number 4276 be granted second and third reading.
You may recall this earlier from those public hearing minutes. Moved by Director Segal, seconded by Director Nicholson, electoral area directors only. All in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Motion carries. Mr.
And
Robbins.
finally, BEA2, that CVRD bylaw number 4569 be granted third reading.
Moved by Director Segal, seconded by Director Acton. All those in favor? None opposed. Motion carries. Mr. Robbins, where do we go? Where do we go now? Where do we go?
Agenda item 17, which is a notice of motion from Director Ishtash.
No.
Nope.
This is, sorry, Director Justice. That's a typo. It's Director Justice. He's not here. That's just there for your information. We can argue it out with him next time at your regularly scheduled regular board meeting.
And so that was just a notice, and it will come back before the board at the next board meeting.
Takes us to question period.
It does indeed.
Seeing none, we'll ask for a motion to go into closed session under sections.
Community Charter, Section 90, subsections 1, subsections E, J, K, and the addition to your agenda I.
under the alphabet, moved by Director Abbott, seconded by Director Segal. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed? We are closed. And we will, pardon me?
Yes, we've got Toporowski